July 7th, 2017. A clear, calm night over San Francisco. In the skies above the city, Air Canada Flight 759, an Airbus A320, is making its final approach. Inside, 140 passengers and crew are preparing for a routine landing. But on the ground, 4 other airliners are sitting on a taxiway, fully fueled and loaded with over 1,000 passengers, waiting for their turn to depart. In less than 2 minutes, these two worlds will nearly collide in what could have been the deadliest aviation disaster in history. This wasn't a storm, it wasn't a terrorist act, and it wasn't a mechanical failure. It was a chain of small human errors that led one of the most sophisticated airliners in the world to mistake a taxiway for a runway. This is the story of a descent into near catastrophe. The story of how a plane came within just 13.5 feet of striking another jet. Using the official investigation report, we will break down moment by moment how this happened, why it happened, and what chilling lessons were learned from the night aviation held its breath. To understand what went wrong, we first need to understand the setting. Our stage is San Francisco International Airport, or SFO, just before midnight. Like many major airports, SFO uses spiral runways for efficiency. On this night, incoming flights were assigned to runway 28 right. Normally, its sister runway 28 left would be right beside it, brightly lit and active. But not tonight. A critical piece of information had been issued to all pilots. Runway 28 left was closed for construction from 11 p.m. Its lights were completely off. From the sky, it was just a strip of blackness. This small change would have massive consequences. Now, let's meet our flight crew. Air Canada 759 is flying from Toronto, a journey of about 5 hours across the continent, and the controls are two very experienced pilots. The captain, who is flying the aircraft, has over 20,000 hours of flight time. His first officer, who is monitoring, has around 10,000 hours. On paper, they are the definition of professional, but there is a crucial factor that no amount of experience can erase: human physiology. Their flight, originally scheduled for an earlier departure, was delayed. This small change had a cascading effect. By the time they began their descent into San Francisco, the clock on the wall read just before midnight. But for the crew, their internal body clocks were screaming that it was almost 3 a.m. The captain himself had been continuously awake for over 19 hours. The NTSB report highlights that this put them deep inside their window of circadian law. So, what exactly does that mean? The circadian law is a natural part of our 24-hour biological cycle. It is the period, typically between 3 and 5 a.m. for most people, where our body temperature drops and our brain is flooded with signals to go to sleep. During this window, our cognitive function, alertness, and our ability to make complex decisions are at their absolute lowest. So, while these pilots were tasked with one of the most demanding phases of flight, a visual night landing, their bodies were biologically primed for deep sleep. Air traffic control gives Flight 759 the final clearance. The captain disconnects the autopilot to fly the final segment by hand. As he looks out, his brain tries to make sense of the light pattern ahead. He expects to see 2 parallel runways. Instead, he sees the brightly lit runway to its right. And to its right, another parallel line of bright lights, Taxiway Charlie, where 4 jets are lined up. In his fatigued state and suffering from what investigators call expectation bias, his brain makes a fatal assumption. He sees what he expects to see. He mistakes the lead runway to its right for the closed runway to its left, and mistakes the occupied Taxiway Charlie for his landing runway to its right. As the plane descends below 500 feet, the captain sees the lights of the planes on the taxiway, but his biased brain interprets them as strange lights on his runway. Something feels wrong. He asks the first officer to query the tower.
And Tower, just want to confirm this Canada 759, we see some lights on the runway there, across the runway, can you confirm a clear land?
The tower controller, working alone, quickly scans runway to its right. It's empty.
Canada 759, confirm clear to land runway 28 right, there is no one on 28 right, flight view.
Meanwhile, on the ground, the crew of the first plane in line, United Flight 1, is watching in horror.
Where's this guy going? He's on the taxiway.
The Air Canada jet is now at just 100 feet. Suddenly, the scene is blasted with light. The pilot of the second plane in line, the Philippine Airlines A340, has his powerful landing lights on, desperately trying to illuminate the taxiway and warn the incoming jet. This finally shatters the confusion. The captain slams the throttles to full power for an emergency go-around. But an Airbus A320 doesn't climb instantly. For 3 terrifying seconds, it continues to sink. It reaches its lowest point, an altitude of just 60 feet. The official NTSB report, using security camera footage, calculated the separation between the bottom of the Air Canada's landing gear and the top of the Philippine Airlines tail. It was 13.5 feet, 4 meters. The margin was the height of a single storeroom. The engines roar, and the jet finally begins its climb. A catastrophe had been averted. The go-around was successful, but a chilling question hung in the air. How could this have possibly happened? The NTSB investigation didn't find one single cause, but rather a chain of seemingly small, disconnected events that lined up perfectly to create a near disaster. It's what's known in safety science as the Swiss cheese model. The first hole in the cheese began to form hours earlier. They took off without a clear mental picture that their destination airport would look fundamentally different from how they were used to seeing it. This led directly to the second factor, a psychological trap called expectation bias. Because the pilots were not consciously aware of the runway closure, their brains expected to see the familiar sight of 2 parallel right-lead runways. They saw what they expected to see, not what was actually there. This is where the third layer of defense should have kicked in, crew resource management or CRM, but on this night, it crumbled. The most critical failure was a simple procedural step. Let's talk about the instrument landing system. It's a radio signal that guides a plane perfectly to the runway, like an invisible set of rails in the sky. On the pilot's main screen, it looks like 2 crosshairs, one for vertical guidance, one for horizontal. The goal is to keep them centered. See these magenta diamonds? As long as they're centered, the plane is perfectly aligned with the runway. The approach to runway to its right required the pilots to manually tune the frequency. It was a rare exception to their normal procedures, and in their fatigued state, they forgot. The first officer missed the step, and the captain didn't verify it. Look at their screen during the incident approach. The eyeless diamonds are gone. The instrument that should have been screaming at them that they were of course was silent, because it was never turned on. This one small omission was catastrophic, and finally all of these factors were amplified by the crushing weight of fatigue. The captain, being awake for 19 hours, flying at 3 AM body clock time, created the perfect condition for all small errors to go unnoticed, until it was almost too late. In the immediate aftermath of the incident, a strange silence fell. The Air Canada crew landed safely on their second attempt. Their initial report was brief. It's a chilling detail from the investigation that when the pilots were formally interviewed the next day and shown the facts, their reaction was one of pure shock and surprise. In their fatigued state, they had not fully grasped how close to a historic disaster they had come. This incident wasn't just a close call, it was a seismic event for the aviation industry. It exposed critical vulnerabilities. The NTSB acted swiftly, issuing a series of urgent safety recommendations. They mandated more prominent ways to signal runway closure. They also pushed for the accelerated development of cockpit technology that uses GPS to display a plane's exact position on an airport map. But beyond the technology and procedures, the most profound lesson from Air Canada 759 is a deeply human one. The incident is a stark reminder of our own fallibility. It is also a story of human triumph. When all the layers of defense had failed, the final safety net was not a computer or an alarm. It was another human being. The alert captain of the United flight on the ground, who trusted his eyes, overcame the hesitation to question another aircraft, and had the courage to key his microphone and ask that simple, life-saving question.
Where's this guy going?
Those few words, spoken at the perfect moment, broke the spell and pulled everyone back from the brink. The story of Air Canada 759 serves as a permanent chilling case study in aviation. It's a reminder that safety is never a destination, but a constant process of vigilance, learning, and respecting the quiet, powerful forces of human psychology.